Well, a warm welcome along to the big kickoff, looking ahead to what should be another fascinating domestic season, and we're brought to you by SBK. I'm Warren Ashurst, and I'm joined by the Racing Post top tipsters James Milton and Mark Langdon, and we've also got our top professional punter Nick Goff with us as well to look through what should be, as I say, an absolutely enthralling campaign. Before we do look ahead, guys, Mark, we'll start with you. It's been, I suppose, in some ways an elongated summer break, but we have had the Club World Cup as well. What was your overriding thoughts on that?
That it was got a worthwhile place in, I was going to say in the calendar. I mean, I think that's the problem, that there isn't any space in the calendar. I think the people that were negative about it were never going to have their minds changed. But if you went into it with an open mind, I think that there were enough good games to have sort of said, yeah, we can do this again in 4 years' time. Hopefully with kickoffs that that don't mean you've got to stay up until 2 o'clock. I know, Nick, you were heavily involved in the Club World Cup.
Yeah, I traded it, enjoyed it. Good kick-off times with putting the kids to bed and being able to watch the games after that. I didn't stay up for the 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock games this time, but next summer in the World Cup, there's no half measures there. You've got to watch every single game. Those are the rules. So hopefully they'll change the kick-off times so that we don't get games interrupted by the lightning. Whether that's 10 o'clock in the morning kickoffs or 10 at night, some late stuff, I don't know. But they've got to make it work, and they've got a year to figure it out. So this was kind of a dummy run for them as well, which helps mean that the World Cup will have no teething problems. Quite enjoyed the tournament, especially the games between European and South American teams, a clash of styles, which we see in World Cups, but we don't see in club football. So really enjoyed that. And yeah, overall, I thought it was a decent tournament.
And James, just a quick word from you on the season ahead, because it's going to be a mammoth effort. I mean, we're going to go through until pretty much the end of July, of course, when we include the World Cup. So a lot to pack in between now and then.
Absolutely, yeah. Got to pace yourself, but starts here, and just on the back of that Club World Cup, Chelsea, best team in the world now, still rated 4th in the Premier League betting. So I think that sets the scene for the top flight title race this season.
Okay, well, to celebrate the return of the football season, SBK are giving their users a free football bet builder every weekend in August. Just head over to the promotions page and make sure you opt in to claim your free bet builder. Plus, all new users can get £40 in free bets when they sign up and place a first bet of £10. Terms and conditions for both promotions apply. 18 plus. Please remember to gamble responsibly. And before we get into the nitty-gritty of the Premier League, we should show you this as well, which is the new BKO pullout for this season. Again, it's like gold dust in my hand at the moment. And if you do want it and you can't get any at your shops as things stand with them selling out quickly, then there is the option of a PDF or a standalone newspaper on the Racing Post shop website. So something to look forward to and get your teeth into, of course, over the next few weeks. We're going to start off then by having a look at the Premier League, and of course we start at the top end of the table. Liverpool, comfortable victors last time out. And Mark, I think we probably expected that they were going to do a bit of business, having not done much last summer, but probably it's fair to say they've done more than what we thought.
Yeah, they have. I wasn't expecting Arne Slot to sort of be so bold in the window. They lost Alexander-Arnold, so they've not replaced him in terms of like for like, but Florian Wirtz will probably get the same amount of assists that Alexander-Arnold did, just from a different position. I thought Ekitike, saw him last season in the Europa League, looked exciting. He's not cheap, but I think that Liverpool were in a position where they didn't spend a lot of money last year. They were able to win the league, and it's sort of what Fergie used to say about, when you're on top, that's when you really should be going for it. I think that they're a very well run club, and that's what the best tend to do. If you're a badly run club, you get yourself into a mess, and then you spend a load of money trying to recover. The best way to do it is to do it from a position of strength.
And Liverpool in particular, Mills, is probably a bit of a surprise, bearing in mind that the goal threat they've had the last few seasons, but they've looked at trying to increase that kind of goal threat going forward. Mo Salah stays on, but of course Ekitike, as Mark's mentioned, and Wirtz as well, should be delivering up top.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a smart thing to do. Salah's obviously signed a new contract, but you can't expect him at his age to churn out the kind of numbers he did last season for the next 2 or 3 years. And yes, so they've signed a couple of really exciting young forwards from the Bundesliga. And I think also, looking at Slot, we've mentioned he didn't need to do much last summer. think Jurgen Klopp left him a really kind of progressive squad. You know, when you compare to kind of the end of the Ferguson era at United, and you know that squad he won his last title with, you know there was no sense of an end of an era when Klopp left, and you know so that made the transition very smooth for Slot, and now you know he's in a powerful position to kind of kick on in the transfer market. Yeah.
It's fair to say that not many teams are able to put it back to back and get Premier League titles like that. Is it fair that Liverpool are where they are in the market at the moment?
I think, yeah, they have to be favourites. They set the bench. They're the bench setter, if you like, benchmark setter even. I think personally they're a touch too short though, and I think that they weren't as much better than the field last year than the league table suggested at the end. Yeah, they've done well in the transfer market. But a lot of things went their way. They didn't get key injuries. Salah will go away for a lot of games because the African nations this year starts before Christmas for the first time. So potential to miss more games than even in the usual African nations. And what we've found with that tournament is players can sometimes come back and take a little bit of time to get back into their stride in domestic football. So how much of an effect that'll have on still their key player, we'll wait and see. So I think they're rightly favourites, but this is let's say a unique Premier League season because I don't think we've had a title race as wide open as this for quite a while now. Yeah. We often get two teams going head to head, but you could get 3 or 4 in the race quite late on this season. It's entirely possible.
I think as well, without giving away the tips, the 3 of us have got 3 different teams to win the Premier League, and I can't ever sort of remember. We've been doing these for a while now. I can't remember that being the situation before.
No, we mentioned there the teams probably that most people are thinking are in the running would include Arsenal. They've been knocking on the door of late, Mark. Is that door going to be open this season?
Well, seconditis can become an issue, can't it? 3 years in a row. Like last season, I thought was the time for them to really step up. They did get injuries, actually, a bad time for them. Unlike Liverpool, you know, they ended up with, and you can say it's poor planning to be left with Moreno up front. I think there was some bad fortune as well in that. I actually felt, though, that they took a step backwards last season. I felt that Arteta started to almost believe this sort of set-piece thing and relied too much on it, and that they were not playing to the kind of free-flowing football that they had previously and were a bit cloggy, really, in the way that they were. I remember they played Paris Saint-Germain in the Champions League, and there were moments when it was like watching Stoke with the long throws. They're very good at set-pieces. They're the best defensive team in the league. The key question, and I think this probably is, do you fancy Arsenal or not? Can Gyökeres step up from the Portuguese league and get 15, 20 goals that maybe wins them the league?
And that is the question, I suppose, isn't it, Milton, as to Arsenal's title challenge? It seems to a lot to put on one player, but Gyökeres is going to have to deliver if they're going to get over the line.
Yeah, it is a lot of pressure. I mean, you look at it last season. I think Kai Havertz was the top league scorer with 9, which and he was injured for from about February onwards. So it is a huge thing, and it's been built up, hasn't it? Arsenal, when they sign this striker, everything's going to be okay. And I'm not convinced it's quite that simple. Really. I do think in terms of the midfield options now with Zubimendi as well coming into what was a real area of strength already, they're superb. Defensively, I've got no concerns at all. David Raya has been terrific in goal, but yeah, as Mark mentioned, there was real long moments in last season where the attacking fluency from open play was pretty much non-existent, and obviously when Saka's not there, then it's a huge issue. And the concern is Arsenal are incredibly competitive and very good in the Champions League as well. But I just felt that, when there was a setback, when Saka was injured or Odegaard was injured, I just didn't feel like the rest of them stepped up as maybe Liverpool would have done.
Putting you on the spot early in the show here, Nick, I can imagine you thinking, but the two, as far as the odds are concerned, who look like Liverpool's main contenders are Arsenal and Manchester City. Would you have a preference between those two? Yeah,
it's Arsenal for me. I take on board everything Mark's just said and James has just said about maybe Arsenal going backwards a little bit last season. My take on it is actually they've signed the players this summer that they should have signed last summer, and it might have been a different story. Zubimendi is going to be that quality player alongside Rice, which they didn't really have. Madueke will be a Saka backup, if you like. If he ever goes down and needs a rest, they've got someone to replace him. They've got the 2 strikers now, in Gyökeres and Havertz, to play 2 different styles, whichever one they want at any time. Lewis Skelly, a year older, looks like he's going to be a quality player, and Wanyeri, he's a really good player as well. We all say in goal at the back, they're absolutely fine. So they're now ticking all the boxes for me, even though I agree they probably did take a step backwards last season. They got it wrong in the window last season. I think they've got it right this time around.
Nick, can I just ask, like, how do you price up mentality? And sort of, you often hear, have they got the mental strength? Do you just ignore that, or do you have to sort of put that into your ratings? 9
and 10 month seasons are such a long time, and people remember. It's an outcome bias. People remember little things that happen. Arsenal arguably got the closest to turning over PSG. They absolutely battered Liverpool, and Arsenal gave as good as they got. And in key moments, PSG got it done. But it didn't have to end that way. Played the game again 2 weeks later. Maybe Arsenal beat them, and they were the only team that might have done it in Europe last year. So I think it's real fine margins, and the mentality thing. Although I keep it in mind a little bit. I think coming second 3 times in a row is not necessarily a negative. It's more likely to say that they are the closest to kicking on and finally doing it.
I think it's fair to say, Mark, that a number of punters will be scratching their head at Manchester City and thinking, where do they go from here? I mean, not many, if anybody, would have predicted what happened last season. And obviously Rodri being absent for such a long time was a huge blow, and having him back will be huge as well. But obviously De Bruyne's gone now. Haaland didn't look to be the player that potentially we thought he was the season before, and I know injuries had an impact there as well. Where do you see them at this stage?
I'm going for them to win the league. Now, they could finish sort of 4th, and I think if they do, there'll be a lot of people saying, well, this was the start of the decline. I'm just prepared to give Guardiola kind of that faith that he can get it right and sort it out quickly. I didn't see the decline coming, not to the extent. I felt that they, I think we sat here last year and went for Arsenal. So I felt there was going to be a little decline. It obviously went spectacularly wrong. They actually picked up more points than any other team in the second half of the season. Now, they were trying probably more than some of the others because Liverpool had won the league. Arsenal were then thinking Champions League, and City still had to finish in the top 4. But they definitely, I think, improved towards the end of the season. There were glimpses at the Club World Cup of their best and their worst. I think they've signed really well. I think I love Reinders in midfield. I think he's not De Bruyne yet, but De Bruyne had fallen off to levels where he wasn't really recognisable anyway. Marmoush gives them a new option up front that they didn't have this time last year. I actually like their defensive options, even though they probably collectively didn't play well at the back. And Guardiola had his own personal problems last season. So I think you can sort of put that and Rodri together and think, okay, it was just one of them things. That team had reached the end of its kind of line. And I did agree with Nick on Liverpool maybe not being quite as far ahead of everybody as what the league table thought. So that's why I'm going for City to win the league, although it's with a nervousness that, this is a tough league.
We've already touched upon Chelsea, James, and their Club World Cup success, and they are 4th best in terms of the betting for the title, and they've decided to suppose, in a way, gamble with their attacking changes. João Pedro and Liam Delap come in. We said at times last season that Nicholas Jackson, will he come good, will he not come good, but it looks like they've lost faith with him.
Yeah, I think so, and just the commitment to spending heavily on young players, which has I've been doing it for a few years now. If you spend that amount of money, you are going to end up with a half decent team. And I think they are making significant progress. I think when the Premier League betting was first revealed at the end of last season, there were a bigger price than Newcastle, and obviously the Club World Cup's been a big factor, but they've been a real plunge for them in the title betting. We've spoken about the front 3. I think there is still going to be a sizable gap there. But yeah, I think Chelsea, really progressive squad. You're looking at players like Cole Palmer and Caicedo and Fernandes. These are world-class players who are, 23, 24. And the bold strategy of not sacking the manager after one season may just work out for them as well. So
there might be a temptation, Nick, a little bit with Chelsea to look at that win over PSG and go, they're the real deal. Where are they at in terms, do you think, of challenging for a title?
Yeah, I think they're going to be a lot closer, but they're still, for me, one step away. They haven't got that real dominant centre-back that Liverpool have in Van Dijk or Saliba at Arsenal. There's a few question marks still. Even there's 2 strikers they've brought in, for me, João Pedro, he made some debut in the Club World Cup, but he's still an inch below the real top bracket for me. I wouldn't be surprised if they come third. And put themselves in a real mix next season, but that would be where I have them for now.
And I suppose the best of the rest, as we often put it, you're looking at Newcastle, you're looking at Spurs, you're looking at Villa, and then you're also maybe even looking at Manchester United with the dealings they've done, Mark. Of those 4 clubs, who are you looking at in terms of thinking this should be a better season and we could see them towards the upper echelons?
Well, Man United and Tottenham should have better seasons. Be hard for them to have worse seasons. I think Newcastle, I would say, the most interesting because big doubts over Isak and what happens with him. In terms of him wanting to leave. If he stays, I think it's a massive boost for Newcastle. If he leaves, particularly at this stage of the window, it becomes really difficult to replace him. I felt they kind of won the trophy last season, so they got that monkey off their back. And then, as James said, I think there was a lot of hype around Newcastle in May time that they would step up. And I think when they get it together and play, that midfield is so strong, Guimaraes, Joelinton and Tonali, that when they play well, and I think Howe's a very good coach as well, but the Champions League took it out of them a couple of years ago, and I'm not sure if they can play at that same pace now. So they could be the team that, if everything goes right between now and the end of the transfer window, where they finish 5th, they could also be the team, if it goes badly, might be the ones that end up being 9th or 10th. So I've got them as the hardest ones to weigh up at the moment.
Ask Mark about Arsenal. It seems only fair, James, ask you about Tottenham. Thomas Frank's obviously come in. I think to most neutrals, they'd say it's a good appointment from Tottenham. Where can Spurs reach this season under the new manager?
I'm disappointed. Mark thinks they're going to improve on 17th, but I think Frank's a good appointment. I mean, it's still hard to get your head around last season, isn't it? With Postecoglou winning the Europa League and then going and finishing 17th, as I said. But the injuries. I think the injuries were a real factor in that. It wasn't just Postecoglou kind of clutching at straws, looking for excuses. He just couldn't get his best team out there, could he, for 2 games on the trot. And I think Tottenham will be, obviously got the Champions League as well, but I think they'll be top 6. I'm certainly more positive on them.
Brighton,
I like Brighton just in the as you mentioned with Newcastle, if things fall apart for them and United and Tottenham and Aston Villa seem to be treading water a little bit in the transfer market, they don't want to lose Morgan Rogers, certainly. I think Brighton are there with no European football, another season under Hertzler. I think they could kind of pick up the pieces and sneak into the top 6 at a decent price.
I've left the biggest conundrum for Nick to answer, which I feel bad about, because the 2 words Manchester United at the moment probably have punters shivering at the minute, Nick. And you've obviously seen quite a lot of Matheus Cunha over recent seasons. Is he the type of player that can get them moving in the right direction?
Potentially, yes. His work rate without the ball is a problem, and that was made clear at Wolves. Vitor Pereira pulled him up on it a lot of times. But they've got the left 10 and the right 10 sorted now with Mbeumo as well. So it just seems that Man United slightly overpay for every player they buy. That's just what they do. And I don't think they've got value in either signing, and still need a proper spearhead of the attack ahead of them. They were impossibly bad last season. It was like there's a floor of where Man United, that this squad should be, and the new coach couldn't even reach that floor. Now, we all said, he needed a pre-season to implement his style. Yeah. They should have been better than that without needing that. So he's got his pre-season now. The early vibes are that they have improved a bit. Not that it was almost impossible not to. But can they reach that? They've got to be top 6 minimum. They're Man United. Can they do that? The jury is out for me. On Tottenham, personally, I don't think Thomas Frank's a better coach than Postecoglou. I don't think you should take managers from Brighton and Brentford anyway, and I think he might be gone by Christmas.
Okay, well, we shall see. Time will tell. It's time now, though, for the guys to give us their best bets in terms of the title and who they see finishing in the top four. Mark, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm for the title, going to go for Manchester City, just in the hope that they can kind of get back to what they were. This time last year, they were favourites. Now they're third favourites. Still got Haaland up front, quality in midfield. Hopefully Foden can have a season not like last season. So I'm going for them. And then I think top four, really like Chelsea for top four. I think that there is a gap between there's probably a 3, then a 1, and then another handful. And I think that Chelsea are more likely to kind of join that 3 than they are to slip back. So I'd be very confident on Chelsea for top 4. Less confident on City to win it, but that's what I'm going for.
Milton, in terms of your title winner and top 4?
Yeah, I'm going for Liverpool to retain it. I think you can look at last season 2 ways. Were they not great champions, particularly in the second half of the season, or did they have a bit to spare? And I think when you look at how they started the Champions League campaign as well, they looked the best team in Europe up until Christmas, and then maybe lost their focus in the league when it was pretty much wrapped up. Lost to PSG in the Champions League. But I think that aggressive approach in the transfer market suggests that they're going to be the team to beat again. I think it's going to be tight between them and Arsenal. Arsenal only lost 4 games in the league last season as well, same number as Liverpool. So I've got Liverpool first, Arsenal second. I think Chelsea can finish above City. I just think the City rebuild it just looks a bit frantic to me now. Guardiola's success has been working with a small core of trusted players, and I think it's going to take time for him to work out who that strongest team is. And I still think the squad's a bit lopsided. I'm not convinced by the defence. So I think Chelsea can nick third ahead of City.
Okay, and we've alluded to it already, Nick, that it looks like a wide open title race. Where would your money be?
So I am on the side of Arsenal. I've just reversed Arsenal and Liverpool with Milton. Liverpool comes second for me. I think Chelsea third, and I'll take Man City fourth. And it's so wide open and so unpredictable that if Mark's right and City win it, I won't be surprised at all. I'll take them to come fourth.
Okay, well, it is wide open, we think, at the top. It's certainly going to be intriguing at the bottom end as well. Of course, we've seen in the last 2 seasons all 3 promoted teams relegated from the Premier League. Will it be the same this time around, or will Leeds, Sunderland and Burnley buck the trend? Mark, it's 3, I would argue, pretty decent-sized football clubs who would hope that they could establish themselves as Premier League teams, but it's already shown in the last few seasons it's not easy to do that.
Yeah, but going back the season before, they all stayed up. So I just think, look, just judge each team on their own merits. I won't get too excited that the gap, is it too big? Who knows? I just think, look at the teams that are there and then judge it. I wouldn't be going on the basis of 2 seasons. I think that's really dangerous. That said, I don't think Burnley will stay up. Wasn't sure about them last season, and they're about to lose James Trafford as we speak. Looks like he's on his way out, and don't think they've done enough in the final third to kind of stay up. Sunderland, I mean, they're having a go at least, but were quite a way off Leeds in the Championship last season, and they have lost Bellingham as well. I think Leeds will stay up. I thought that even they have signed, been quite aggressive in the transfer market, but I actually felt what they were doing last season might have been enough to keep them in the league, and that does make it dangerous. Interested to see, Nick, where you kind of had Leeds last season in terms of if they were a Premier League team, because they were going off like 2-7 and stuff like that in some games.
They'll probably be the highest rated Championship team since Wolves won it, and they came up and stayed up very comfortably. So that is a potential blessing for Leeds. For me, it's almost as much though about the other 17, and if they've all got their house in order, because we have the last couple of years they've all gone. The promoted teams have come down, but there's not been a bad team that have just been sucked into it from the middle of the table. Yeah. A lot of the teams in the middle of the table, your Bournemouths and Fulhams, etc., have been on the upward trajectory. I'm not so sure this year every house is in order. I look at West Ham under Potter and just I see problems. Brentford, new manager that hasn't managed in the Premier League, and best players leaving. The keeper's gone, and Mbeumo's gone, and maybe Visser goes as well, and they lost one midfielder, Norgard, to Arsenal as well. Wolves lost Tate Nori to Man City and Cunha. They're trying to bring players in, but so far, Arias has come from, he did well at the Club World Cup, but need to do a lot more. Everton, David Moyes is in the paper yesterday saying they need 10 new players. You won't get 10.
No.
You might get 5 or 6, but if he thinks he needs 10, just won't happen. Will Everton even have the home advantage that they had? They stayed up because of Goodison a couple of times in history. They haven't got that next year. Will they be able to settle in and call this place home straight away? Or if they have no home advantage, it would be pretty Everton-like to get relegated in the first season in a new stadium, wouldn't it? So I'd have an issue over them, and I'd also have a slight concern about Nottingham Forest having to play Thursday, Sunday every week, which they've not had to do before. Gibbs White is staying, but clearly wanted to go. Yeah. They've lost to Langdon already. The owner's a bit of a maverick, and if they got, he's obviously told Gibbs White, stay with us for a year, and if we don't get in the Champions League, you can go. So that'll be his target.
Yeah.
So what if they're 14th, 15th after 8 games? Would he fire Nuno? He's the sort of guy that might do it. So I just think they could be a little bit unstable as well. So to answer the question in a roundabout way, I think Leeds could stay up because I think one of those, at least, may be worse than we're expecting, or have been expecting in recent years from the established clubs.
I mean, Nick makes a very good case there for those established clubs in
8
trouble.
of them going down.
Built at the moment, yeah. I mean, can you see any of the 3 coming up, staying up?
I think Leeds are the ones, aren't they? I mean, as Mark said, you take it on a case-by-case basis. And looking at the 3 last season, Leicester lost their manager, lost their best player, had off-field issues. Ipswich had back-to-back promotions, suddenly found themselves in the Premier League. And Southampton, as we saw, were swiftly out of their depth. The 3 coming up now, I mean, Leeds and Burnley got 100 points, didn't they, in the Championship? I think the concern for Burnley is, they were just grinding out those 1-0 wins, seemingly week in, week out. Absolutely incredible defensive record, but you're just not going to do that in the Premier League. And I just don't see where their goals are coming from. I think their top scorer last season was Josh Brownhill from midfield. I think he was out of contract. His future still seems to be up in the air.
Yeah.
And then you've got the reservations over Scott Parker at this level. So I think Burnley to finish bottom appeals. Sunderland showed real character in the playoffs. Having finished the season in dismal form, it was difficult for them because they knew they were going to be in the playoffs, and so they did sort of limp through the final weeks. But then those late goals that they scored, and again a young, hungry squad. I like the approach that you're not overpaying for kind of big name journeymen. They are buying young players with plenty to prove.
Carl Walker says hello. He was a free try.
Yes, I've got them to finish just above Burnley, but it's going to be tough for those 2.
Best bets for relegation, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, Nick mentioned sort of the potential problems. I've gone for West Ham of those. I mean, this is a team that was probably closer than most to not be in the bottom 3 because they were all tailed off. But if you think that United and Tottenham can't be as bad, again, that puts West Ham really close to the trapdoor. The fans are not happy with Graham Potter at all. He sort of defeatist attitude, I don't think really goes down well with West Ham. I mean, even before the Europa League final, he was saying, good luck to Tottenham, which goes down, not the best in East London. They've lost one of their best players in Kudus, and I'm looking around thinking, well, like, if Bowen gets injured, what happens to West Ham? They seem so reliant on him. I think you could make, Brentford would be the other ones, but I just feel like Brentford will, if Keith Andrews isn't doing it, I think they'll just get rid of him really quickly. I think they'll know exactly where they are, and I don't think West Ham have got that same kind of nous in the boardroom to kind of maybe understand how big the threat could be until it becomes quite late. And to just agree with Nick on something else, like Potter, he did well at Brighton, but Brighton is set up for you to do well. Like Chelsea didn't go great for him, so you're going back some time now before he was able to really stamp his authority on a club. So, West Ham might be the ones for me.
What's the better betting play here, Nick? To go with one of the newly promoted teams to stay up or one of the established teams to be relegated?
Yeah, I don't think there's a huge amount of value necessarily in Leeds to stay up now. I think the market is on to the fact that Leeds are a bit better than the average promoted club and that there are issues at the other ones. So at a bigger price, around 9-1, my selection would be Forest. Chris Wood scored about 30% of his shots last year, which Messi and Ronaldo don't manage over a career, so that has to regress. And the keeper's save percentage was highest in the league as well. So at both ends of the pitch, you have to expect some regression. And that's on top of playing in Europe every week, losing players. I just think that they're primed to slip back down, and the market has them pitched at a level where they're expected to be top half. Now, cast your mind back 12 months ago of the sides that hadn't just been promoted; they were the favourites to go down.
Yeah.
So things have changed very quickly. In some ways, for good reason. But I think maybe they're slightly overpriced, and if they start badly, could get into a little bit of a rut.
Okay, well, maybe struggles ahead then for Forest. Okay, well, we'll move on now to the top goal scorer market for the Premier League. And of course, we are doing this and recording this prior to the transfer window closing, Mark, which could have an impact, particularly, you would think, with Alexander Isak.
Well, yes. In as much as if he leaves and joins a Saudi club, then you wouldn't want to be on him. If he goes to Liverpool or if he stays at Newcastle, if I were backing him, I'd be happy with either of those sort of outcomes. Yeah. If he stays at Newcastle, he's on penalties. If he goes to Liverpool, they'll score more goals. So, and he would be my selection. I think he's a quality player that at Newcastle the team set up for him. And if you go to Liverpool, you just can't help but sort of, Darwin Núñez did find a way not to score all those opportunities, but I think the level between Isak and Núñez would be high. So he would be the one for me. Yeah, I'd go Isak, and I think, Nick, you might agree.
I'd actually rather he stayed at Newcastle. I certainly wouldn't have to bet until you know how this drama's been resolved. Yeah. If he goes to Liverpool, I just think the goals will be shared around. Salah has to get his share, Wirtz will get his share. And playing Champions League midweek, Isak might get a few rests for Ekitike to play. So I'd actually rather he stayed at Newcastle, was the focal point, the main man. If he does sort of sign a contract extension and with a chance that you can leave next year or something like that, I would then back him each way, and I can't see him being out the first four.
Anything stand out for you, Milton, in this market?
I'm going a bit left field with Evan Nilsson at Bournemouth, who looks a big price given his impressive first season in England. He had 2 months sidelined with a foot injury, still got 10 league goals, scored against Wolves and Man City in the FA Cup as well. I think Bournemouth have obviously lost some important defenders, but the attacking unit still looks largely unchanged and should create plenty of chances for him. And I think after that first season, I think he could really kick on.
Before we leave the Premier League, Mark, I know you've got another suggestion.
Yeah, it was just Leeds to be the top promoted club. I think they'll stay up, which if they finish 17th, I think will win the market. But I wouldn't be surprised if they were a bit higher than that. And I definitely don't think that sort of Burnley and Sunderland are going to be sort of 15th or something. And that's where I could see Leeds getting that high. So yeah, Leeds to be the top promoted club.
Well, time to move on to the Championship now before we get the guys' thoughts on the second tier. Just to let you know that until Friday, SBK will be offering a 20% winnings boost on each of the outright markets for the leagues that we've discussed in this preview. Whether you fancy one of the panel's picks or just head over to the promotions page in the SBK app to take advantage of them. Certainly one to look out for. The Championship is... well, it's a minefield at the best of times, Mark, in terms of results. But in recent seasons, teams have really benefited from the parachute payments and those that have come down from the Premier League. Can we think we might see a similar issue this time around?
Well, I mean, 5 of the last 6 favourites have won. So I think probably used to have this reputation, didn't it? It's like this crazy league where anyone could beat anyone. But I'm not sure it's any wilder than anything else. Really, the promoted, so relegated teams do have those parachute payments, which clearly helps now. I think you used to get to a stage where the teams would be absolutely gutted and it would be difficult for them. Ipswich looked like they were all half planning to be in the Championship with the signings they were making. I can't work Southampton out. Leicester would be the ones that if you'd have more question marks over because it it sort of sounds like they could be heading for a points deduction. But I might head over to the other two guys because they both fancy the Tractor Boys, so it might be worth saying why.
Milton, we'll come to you in a moment. Nick, I'll start with you first in terms of Ipswich. How much of a bearing does it have for you that Kieran McKenna's still in charge?
I think it's huge. He couldn't have been more impressed with him in the journey through League One and the Championship. And you take nothing away for the way he set them up in the Premier League. They just weren't quite good enough. But they probably, they gave it more of a go than Leicester and Southampton did, really. Although they finished a similar amount of points as Leicester in the end. But you fancied them in certain games last year, and they showed up and put a decent performance in every now and again. Like Mark said, they've signed players going into last season that they knew may well stick around, because the players that Southampton and Leicester have to lose consider themselves Premier League players. Jack Clarke smashed up the Championship. Sammy Smodic's top scorer in the Championship. O'Shea. These are players who have proven it at Championship level, probably aren't going to be quite wanted by Premier League clubs right now, and are there with a manager who's done this once before. They tick all the boxes for me, Ipswich, and I'm not so worried about Southampton and Leicester, the other two that came down. I'll be more worried about Coventry and Sheffield United, who set the standard of the sides who didn't go up. Sheffield United have signed the loan player Louis Barry from Villa, who was so good at Stockport last year that I expect him to be good in the Championship. So Sheffield United will be there or thereabouts again, and Coventry are very solid and very stable, so they'll be challenging, but I can't have anyone above Ipswich.
In terms of Ipswich and your favouritism towards them, Milts, I mean, if I was playing devil's advocate, losing Liam Delap is going to be a big blow to them, but it's already been mentioned by Nick, somebody like Sammy Smodics has got so much experience at Championship level that he might just automatically slot in.
Absolutely, yeah. He scored bundles of goals for Blackburn, didn't he, in his last Championship season? And they got promoted without Delap last time. I think, as Nick said, it was, after back-to-back promotions, I think probably their performances were as good as could be expected, really, in the Premier League. And keeping McKenna there, having that squad full of, not just proven Championship performers, but very good Championship performers, and just, having those expectations kind of, not too ridiculous. I think they are just a really solid betting proposition. And as Mark mentioned, the favourites have had a fantastic record in this heat in recent seasons. I don't know if it's like the Grand National that the fences have got smaller and smaller, but yeah, it's not the same kind of toughest division to get out of. If you're a good side, as Leeds have proved eventually, you can outclass teams on a regular basis.
We'll look at the top goal scorer potential and relegation in a moment, Mark, but Nick's already mentioned there Coventry and Sheffield United challenging. Is there any sort of dark horses that you think might get involved?
I don't see anyone from outside sort of the front 6 or 7 in the betting sort of challenging for the sort of title. I know again that James and Nick have both got sort of one that they like for the top 6. I thought Coventry were the bet in the Championship. Actually, they were under Frank Lampard. Outside of Leeds, you could have argued they were right up there. I would have said sort of second half of the season. I looked at their squad. Most of their players are in the mid-20s, and they've not lost anybody of significant note yet. Rodoni and Haji Wright have both been linked with moves away, but actually still there, and they've got the Gyökeres money. They had a decent sell-on from there, so I'm hoping that they can sort of take a step forward this season. I don't see a Leeds in there. Like this time last year, Saturday, I really fancied Leeds. I couldn't say I really fancy sort of Ipswich now to kind of be sort of 100-point team. So I think if Coventry can play where they did last season, that gives them a strong shout, I would say, at least of promotion. And I do prefer kind of playing win and promotion, because you sometimes do get a team that just romps away with it. So Coventry would be the one for me. Milks was talking there about the Grand National, maybe Coventry, the housewife's choice under Frank Lampard.
Ipswich, obviously your fancy, Nick. Is there anybody else that catches your eye in terms of value here?
Yeah, I think there could be a shuffling of the mid-pack this season, and teams who have traditionally expected to be minimum top 6, who may now have run out of parachute payments, in Norwiches and West Broms, teams like that, it's going to be harder for them, and teams like Middlesbrough, Bristol City, who have been up there recently, question marks over them. So can there be teams that come out of the lower mid-pack to challenge for playoffs now? And there's a few, like Watford, Derby, who that applied to potentially, but the one I've fallen on actually is Portsmouth, who I think probably the most stable as a club. They've been for about 20 years now. Really like the manager. On their day last year, were a good side, but they've got to learn how to win away games because they'll always be strong at Fratton Park. If they can start picking up some away wins, I think the difference between them at the moment and the teams that are shorter prices for a top six isn't that small, and around 9-1, like top six finish and the season handicap, they're a team I think might take a step forward.
Yeah, another big price in Portsmouth. Before we look at the relegation, Milts, quick word on top goal scorer in the Championship. Any suggestions here?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a vintage heat last season. I don't think any player made it to 20 goals. I was looking at Tommy Conway, actually, Middlesbrough, had a decent season, only 22 years old. You know, he scored regularly for Bristol City in a couple of previous campaigns, and then 13 goals for Borough last season, not starting every week. So I thought he was one who could progress.
Relegation. It's going to be one of those years, and as Nick's alluded to there already, that it could be a bit of a changing of order in terms of the Championship. Those teams that we might have seen challenging for top six might be sucked into the bottom half, maybe, Mark, a little bit.
Yeah, I haven't got one for relegation. I think Sheffield Wednesday's issues are well documented.
Yeah.
You're not going to get rich back in them to go down, but they might take up one of the spots, and then you've only got two to play for. I'm going to just flip it back because I do want to talk about top goal scorer. I like Ivanovic at Millwall. I think he's somebody that has definitely got goals in him, got 11 in second half of last season. James, you were saying off air that you thought Millwall might be a top 6 team.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, it only finished 2 points off the playoffs last season. They've scored, I think, 47 goals in 46 games. So there's obviously improvement there. And yeah, Ivanovic is certainly, I think he's only 20, already a full Serbia international.
Yeah, so I'm going to sit relegation out. I'll hand that over to Nick. I think he likes it.
Yeah, fairly strong one in the relegation market. I think Preston just get a little bit worse each year. And they were favourites to go down on the last day of the season, and they pulled it out of the bag, winning at Bristol City. They've lost a couple more players this summer. I just feel like it's a club that have stagnated and at some point will go down. And at 5-1, I don't understand why they're that priced. I thought they should be much shorter.
Okay, well, that is the Championship covered then for the new season. And again, I'm sure we'll have some dramatic games and incidents to talk about in terms of the second tier. Well, League One has also been intriguing over the last few seasons. We've seen quite a few big teams coming up from the lower leagues and causing a stir in recent seasons. And I wonder whether we might get a similar scenario this time around. We've lost the likes of Birmingham and Wrexham, Mark, in terms of League One. But what do you look at in terms of the league battle this time around?
Well, I think, obviously Luton were in the Premier League a couple of seasons ago, so set the standard in terms of still got parachute payments in League One, which not saying they'll be the new Birmingham, but they've got the potential, to justify favouritism. I'd have less confidence over the kind of other two relegated teams. Cardiff got a lot to do and seem to be relying maybe on youth players, and Plymouth lost their best players in terms of both boxes. Hardy went to Wrexham, for example.
Yeah.
I think he'll do quite well there, actually. So I was looking just a bit further down the list, and I think that Stockport absolutely rock solid. Done nothing. It feels like a racing cliche. Done nothing but improve under Dave Challinor year after year. He's gone from the National League through League Two. Very good year in League One last year. They were third in what was a fairly hot division. Wrexham have got a lot of money, and Birmingham, probably the best teams ever played at that level, certainly kind of since the Premier League came around and football changed. So to finish third, they might not need to do that much more to actually win the league this time around. Got a lot of love for Challinor. I think he's a very good coach, and yeah, I've just got them down as the only thing that concerns me is playoff hangover, because they finished. I went to the game against Orient where it was a rough offside call that they had in the first leg, and then they went out on penalties. And you do need to lift spirits after that. We saw Bolton last year, playoff hangover, didn't start well. Manager gets a sack, and they ended up missing out on the playoffs. But I don't see that happening for Challinor, because Ian Evatt had kind of lost a few of the loyalists at Bolton, whereas at Stockport, he runs the show. He's just signed a new contract. I'd be very surprised if they like top 6 would be really solid. And I think if you're really that confident about finishing in top 6, you've got to have a go at the title as well.
Milton, is it a case of nobody really running away with League One this season, do you think?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think, as Mark says, Luton are clearly, from where they've come from, they've got the potential to be a cut above the rest. But yeah, I like Stockport as well. I think, as Mark said, Cardiff and Plymouth, make little appeal, I think, at the prices. And Stockport just made so much progress under Dave Challoner, and I think they were rock solid at home last season. I think only Birmingham won more home games, and penalty shootout in the playoffs, if they can kind of put that behind them, and I think they will, because the feel good factor has been there for sort of the last 5 years or so. I think they're really solid each way options.
Yeah, 87 points last year. So I mean, that's a good effort.
It is very good indeed. And you, Nick, I mean, you'll have looked at this, I'm sure, in great detail already. But is there any real value in League One, do you think?
I agree with the boys that Stockport will be there or thereabouts. My one concern with them is 3 years ago they lost the playoff final from League Two on penalties, and they started the following season really slowly. Won one of their first 6, they were 20th in the league, then won 13 league games in a row. Ended up winning the league. You can't win 13 in a row in League One. It's just not possible. And if they get off to a bad start and Luton are as good as I think they might be, then they might already be halfway away and gone, Luton. They come on a double dip. I watched my club, Wolves, go down 2 years in a row and come into League One as a real toxic football club, and still ended up winning it because they were just that much better than everyone else. Luton aren't a toxic football club, and like, for what they've been through and the roller coaster that they've been on, yeah, their fans would have been annoyed they got relegated last year, but they're not, they're not in a terrible place. They've signed really well again. Good Championship footballers like George Saville have gone in there, and Naki Wells and players like that. The keeper that was at Leyton Orient last year was the best keeper in the league probably.
Keeley,
Keeley, and so him and Kelman were the 2 loan players that Orient had last year. Well, Kelman's gone to the Championship with QPR. So, and this one's in League One. So they're a Championship club. They've got the Doherty. He was a good player in the Premier League. So I think Luton have the potential to just be a class above. Stockport, I agree, will be there or thereabouts. I want to give a mention quickly to Wickham, who were so good for so long last year. Kone stayed the striker for now. The owners are wealthy people, and they're able to spend some money at Wickham. And I think that the only reason they're 20-1 is because they're little Wickham. If it had been a Bolton or a Huddersfield that had got that close last year, they'd be single figures. So from a value or a handicap perspective or a top 6 perspective, do not rule out Wickham. I think they've sort of been forgotten.
You mentioned Huddersfield there, Nick. Been a lot of sort of money for them and kind of...
my fingers last year, ladies.
Is that so it once bitten, twice shy?
A little bit that. They signed that Alfie May's come in, but it's a new inexperienced manager gone in there, and they're short enough in the market now for me to gloss over them. I'll be a bit annoyed if they win it this year, having had so much on them last year, but that's betting, isn't it? Yeah,
it certainly is. And if you look at the top goal scorer market, I imagine Alfie May is going to be towards the top end, but also Nick mentioned there Naki Wells. He might be coming towards the swan song of his career, Mark, but he's still at this level, real quality.
Yeah, I mean, Alfie May's the favourite, and he scored a lot of goals, at this level previously, so you can understand why. But Naki Wells is the one that I was looking at, because if Luton do dominate, all of a sudden, they've got a lot of forwards, Luton, so you've got to work out who plays. But Naki Wells has dropped down from the Championship, where he was kind of getting 10, 11 goals most seasons, and he's played at sort of, I think it's it's more than a decade now, he's played either Premier League or Championship. So he's coming down to League One for the favourites, and I thought he was the one to be on. I will just give a shout out while we're giving shout outs to kind of dark horses. I don't think they'll win the league, but I think Wigan might be better than the market anticipates. I am a fan of Ryan Lowe, who's done well in kind of at least the bottom 2 divisions previously. And the one thing they lacked last season was goals, and bringing Mullin in might just enable them to score goals. Now, he might be a runner as well in the top goal scorer, but Wigan, top half, top 6 would be kind of the way you might want to play them. And Mullin, I couldn't put anyone off him, but I thought Nahki Wells was the way to go.
Before we get Nick's final thoughts on League One, Milt, a quick word from you. Anything else that stands out in this division?
Yeah, I think Nick's got a contradictory view on this thing, but I thought Reading were quite solid to finish in the top 6. You know, finally a bit of stability after the takeover, just outside the playoffs last season. You know, there question marks over Noel Hunt as manager, but they were hard to beat under him in the second half of last season, and pretty solid in the transfer market.
Nick, your final thoughts on League One?
Just from a data perspective, between 12th and 24th in this league, I've got a fag paper between between 12, 13 clubs, about a quarter of a goal or less than that as it stands between the whole mid-table and the teams that are expected for relegation, your Exeters, Wimbledons, Northamptons, teams like that. I don't have them that far behind. So that means from a relegation value perspective, I'm looking at all those clubs in the middle bracket. Teams like Peterborough and Rotherham, who in general have been looking to get out of this league the other way, have lost. Peterborough have lost Poku and the one that went to Stockport, Mothersill. I heard Darragh McAntony on a podcast talking up their chances for the season. They've got a hell of a lot to do if they want to be anywhere near it. Their new manager at Rotherham, he's a question mark. And Reading, for me, completely outperformed their performance data last year. And although the takeover's gone through, they haven't really done that much in the market for me to suggest under Noel Hunt that they're suddenly going to be a true top half team, because their data was never really that. And they're overpriced at about 12 to 1 for relegation. I don't really expect them to go, but the price looked too big. But I don't think you can have a bad bet if you look through the middle of the championship market and just pick the one out you like.
Well, moving on now to League Two, and we're going to have two former Football League clubs re-entering the EFL this season, because Barnet and Oldham were both promoted from the National League, Mark. And I think in particular, probably Barnet expected to do quite well this season.
Yeah, I don't necessarily fancy them to win the league, but I have got them top 7. If you have a look at kind of National League teams that have come up previously, not many have come up with this points tally that Barnet have, and then gone off at the price that they're going off, around about, what was it, 16, 20 to 1, something like that. And I don't really see why they've been sort of not right up there. Maybe because they're not a bigger name. So like you've seen like teams like Chesterfield sort of come up, and they feel bigger, don't they? And Barnet, you can play at the Hive, and just feels like a nice sort of small team in inverted commas, if you like. But their National League record would suggest that they should, I think, be sort of top 7-ish. The talking horses of this division are in the bad books of this group from last year with MK Dons. So been backed all summer from, was it about 9 to 1 into 7 to 2. I can let them pass over at that price.
Yeah, I mean, we'll start with the talk of the National League. Does it assign, do you think, Nick, that teams that have come up from the National League to League Two have done pretty well in recent seasons, that the gap is minimal now?
Yeah, definitely. There's a bottleneck because only 2 teams come up, and at some point they need to change that to 3. It just would be fair to do so. There's a lot of teams with a lot of money that are trying to get out of that league and can't. Weirdly, Mark's just touched on it, the way this has been priced, Barnet finished 29 points ahead of Oldham. And the market's sort of 20 to 1 Barnet, 25 Oldham. I'd be about 8 and 50. I think the gulf between the two, even though Oldham have signed a few players, is huge. In the league game, Barnet went off evens away to Oldham in March, something like that. So there's a big gap between them. I think the market has pitched Barnet all wrong. And so if you're top 7 and promotion and handicap bets, Barnet are the place to look. With MK Dons, you've got to respect them. But is the squad right now, they've signed 5 or 6 good players for good money, it's only 5 or 6, and they needed a whole new team really based on how they finished last season. Is the squad right now head and shoulders above the rest of the league in the way I think Ipswich and Luton's probably are in Championship League One? For me, no. And then you add into that Chesterfield are spending good money on good players as well. Is there much between MK and Chesterfield at the moment? I don't think so. So I've looked for some value further down the list, and the one that tickled the boxes for me is Colchester, 20 to 1. The Cowleys it looked like last year they were getting themselves set up for this year. They only missed the playoffs by 3 points. They were a very dour side. Their Asian goal line for every game was like the lowest in the league, sort of 2.0 goals, expecting very low scoring games. They've brought 2 forwards in on loan, one from Spurs and one from Oxford. So they've addressed that problem. And they're managers who know how to get out of that league and know what they're doing there. So I think 20 to 1 about them, and it's about 20 Barnet as well. Those are the 2 I'd be on.
In terms of the MK Dons, Milts, obviously there's a lot of interest in them because, as Nick said, they've brought in a load of players. Can you understand why they're as short as they are?
I can, and obviously, if you've got on at the start of the summer, you're on good terms with yourself. But as Nick said, there are a lot of serious contenders as well. I think MK Dons, the gamble on them means Chesterfield are a really nice each way play. They went off favourites last season, having just come up from the National League. Took a bit of time to settle. I mean, they had horrific injuries, I think, particularly over the winter. They were missing kind of a dozen players, and the results reflected that. And then they rallied to sneak into the playoffs and lost to Walsall. I expect them to be far more consistent this time around under Paul Cook. It's a strong, settled squad. I saw they actually hammered champions Doncaster home and away last season, so they could turn it on their day, and I expect them to be a lot more reliable this season.
Mark, anything else catch your eye in League Two?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting league, because if you don't feel like MK Dons are sort of like worthy of the price they are, then that brings a load of the other ones into play. We've not mentioned Gillingham. I think Gareth Ainsworth could be a bit of a cheat code, really, in this league. I just felt they got some old legs in there. Bradley Dack, Johnny Esther in midfield, and so they've just bought Vokes as well. And I did wonder about Chesterfield as well. Maybe their legs up front. They're relying on some old stagers that are very good for the level. I'm going to go through half the division here, but Clark's gone back at Bristol Rovers. Have done well there previously, so I would respect them. And I think these are all building up to why. I think you can have a go at sort of taking on MK Dons. Already given Barnet a good shout out. The ones that I landed on though were Salford, who I watched because I was on Doncaster last season. It just sort of felt like I watched every Doncaster game. They played Salford on a midweek night. I think it was like Champions League night, but I had like at least one eye on the events at Salford, and I was really impressed. I think Doncaster were a good side, and Salford were at least their equals on that occasion. They had a lot of injuries, and Cole Robinson does like to get his excuses in, but they had a lot of injuries at one stage in the season, and that derailed them. Once they got everybody back together again, they finished well, but were just unable to get into the playoffs. Grant from Hearts is a player that you'd expect to do well at League Two. They've got a budget to be very competitive, so I just because of MK Dons are kind of... You could probably have a go at this one with 3 or 4 different ones, and Salford were the ones that I landed on.
I know that Milt's has got a relegation thought in a moment, but before we go to you, James, Nick, just a quick word. Anything else in League Two catch your eye?
I found the relegation market really trappy with only 2 places to go. I've had a few bets in it the last few years, and they've all got beat, and so I'm abstaining there this year.
Yeah, don't blame you. Milt, we'll go over to you because you have got a thought on
that's certainly a valid caveat for this market. I just thought Harrogate, have been kind of circling the plug hole for a few seasons now. Finished 17th or lower in 4 of their 5 seasons in the division. They did actually finish ahead of MK Dons last season, so that goes to show how much can change over the close season. But they're working on a very, very tight budget, and I think this could be the season when they drop out of the league.
Can I give a shout out to Shrewsbury in the relegation market, just because last few years, or certainly last couple, a team has fallen, collapsed, gone through 2 divisions.
Last season.
Carlisle, Southend have done it as well. And like Shrewsbury were really bad last season. They've got a manager in Appleton that probably would expect, he'd probably say he's too good for the level, really, League Two. He gets a lot of praise, Appleton, but he's definitely had some jobs where it hasn't gone well for him. And if he kind of isn't able to turn Shrewsbury around, I think just looking at them purely on what they did last season, they might be ones that kind of don't go too well. One team we didn't mention in the outright, another one was Swindon, who finished really well under Ian Holloway, and I want to give a shout out to one of the strikers that they've brought in, because his teams tend to score a lot of goals, and so in League Two Golden Boot, Jake Tabor, he was playing like step 7 or something like that last season, but just checking my notes, 127 goals in 91 games. Now, that was a standard couple above park football, but sometimes you get these ones that kind of come in and they're just able to play at League Two. So I just thought he might be worth an interest. I've noticed there'd been a bit of money for him as well, so I'm not the only one that's kind of read about his goal scoring record.
They'll be wondering whether they found another Jamie Vardy maybe ahead of the new season. Yeah. Well, we move now from English football into Europe. We'll look at the likes of Serie A and La Liga in a few moments' time, but we're going to start off with the Champions League, which, well, we saw a new format last season. Mark, firstly, how do you think that went?
I mean, it's a marathon, isn't it? It went. I enjoyed it. There might still be some tweaks to make it even better, but definitely the group stage had run its course. The one thing that did me in was just those extra games just meant that there are just, like, if you look at the calendar, I think the after August, if there's not an international break, the next 3 midweeks about April. So that's a really daunting prospect from a sort of punting point of view, or it could be really exciting from a punting point of view, depends. But just from a work standpoint, there's just more to get through. Yeah. But I mean, ultimately, I enjoyed it more than I did the group stage, and the knockout phase just remains the best level of football. I mean, the Barcelona-Inter game was astonishingly good.
Yeah, I mean, from a betting perspective, Nick, has anything changed with the new format for you?
Yeah, group betting's kind of dead now because the league format doesn't lend itself to betting naturally. I wonder, but I totally agree with Mark. It's better than it was. That old group format, it was the same teams beating up the same teams every year. You could pick 15 of the 16 qualifiers usually, just when the draw was made. So they had to change it. But a 36-team league table for me doesn't quite look right. We're not used to looking at that. I wonder if the way you might change it is to have 2 leagues of 20, expand it even more to 40 teams, have 2 divisions of 40 for the group bit, and then a section of each for the knockouts, and the winners of both end up being the final. That might be the way that they need to go with it, and because that league would look fine with 20 teams in it. In 36, it just looks a little bit silly. Overall, enjoyed the format. Yeah.
Good. Well, positive from the Champions League point of view and the format, Milton. We got, you have to say, probably over the course of the season, I would say the right winner, because PSG certainly showed their quality throughout that, beating 3 Premier League teams, of course, on the way as well. They're going to take all the beating, aren't they?
Absolutely. I mean, they were one of the teams who made the league phase exciting because they got themselves into a real hole and early defeats at Arsenal and Atletico and Bayern Munich, I think. And then, absolutely phenomenal performances from then on. The final was extraordinary. I think they probably are the right favourites. They've been quite quiet in the transfer market, but their squad just looked very, very imposing. And as we saw in the domestic league last season, not many of their players even started more than kind of 25 games. They're just able to rotate all season long, and that's a huge advantage, I think.
When they lose the Super Cup to Tottenham,
that could be the morale.
Well, we sat here, didn't we, talking about the European finals not that long ago, Mark, and most of us thought that PSG were the team to beat in the final. I'm not sure that anybody expected them to run riot as they did against Inter.
No, it was a spectacular performance. You did make you wish, though, that Barcelona had just seen off Inter, and I think that would have been a sort of closer game probably. There might well have been 5 goals, but they would have been shared around a little bit more. I'm going for Barcelona to win it this year. I thought they were very close last time around. They should have beaten Inter. They set pieces was an Achilles heel, and it might be again, but they will be returning at some stage to the Camp Nou, so home advantage back for them, playing in the Olympic Stadium. It's a home, but it's not their home, and so I expect them to be better. This time around, I don't think Inter would have got away with a draw at the Nou Camp, for instance, and that ultimately cost them. It's mainly a young team. Take Lewandowski out of it, and it's probably sort of not reached its peak yet. Don't expect Marcus Rashford to make that much of a sort of difference for them, but he's another option up front. But Lamine Yamal, he's probably not finished getting kind of to as good as he can be. So I think you can make a case for a number of the teams up there. I landed on Barcelona.
Anything catch your eye in the betting, Nick?
So I wondered if there might be an edge in favour of Barcelona and Liverpool, having not gone to the World Club Cup. And by the end of next season, might be a little touch fresher than all of the others that have played throughout the summer and not really had a break. But it has to come back to price betting. And PSG are so much better than everyone else at the moment, and the market doesn't really reflect that. I think that everyone's a bit too close price-wise to PSG compared to what I think they should be, and so I'll stick with PSG.
Okay, well, PSG look like the team to beat as far as the Champions League is concerned.
We've got a third choice.
Have
one.
we? Right.
The
okay,
Arsenal supporting former season ticket holder of the Emirates. Who do you like, James?
Tottenham. No. I'm quite confident at Arsenal. If I was having a bet at this stage, I just felt like it was all quite easy for Arsenal up until they played PSG last season. You know, they defend so well, barely conceded any goals, and that PSG game, you know, Arsenal not at full strength. PSG produced 3 brilliant finishes, and Arsenal produced their usual not very brilliant finishes. But I think they're big players, and as Nick said, so you know, obviously didn't go to the Club World Cup. Hopefully, better luck with injuries this season. So, yeah, I'm more positive about them in Europe than in the Premier League, actually.
I did say to him that we were previewing the men's Champions League and not the women's.
Yeah, apologies to Arsenal fans. I nearly didn't allow Milt to get his tip in there, but Arsenal for the Champions League, we shall see. In terms of Europe, we've already mentioned, of course, how strong PSG are, and I imagine in Liga, it's going to be very difficult for anybody to get anywhere near to them.
Yeah, 1 point PSG to win the league, about 20's on. Look, yeah, you've got to go betting without. I haven't got much in France without. I think Strasbourg will be a team to watch because they're part of the Chelsea group. So they get kind of, not cast-offs is maybe the wrong word, but they to feed a club into Chelsea, did well last season. In a league where a lot of the teams are facing financial issues, they're one that are not. But you like Monaco, don't you, James?
Yeah, I think Monaco without
Not
PSG,
for a holiday resort.
I wouldn't put you off it, but Monaco without PSG looks pretty solid. Finished third just behind Marseille last season, but I think the underlying stats suggested Monaco were superior to Marseille, and plenty of goals in them. And as Mark said, a lot of the other contenders, you know, Lille have lost Jonathan David to Juventus. Lyon have obviously had a tumultuous summer, being relegated and then winning the appeal. So I think Monaco look the ones to chase home.
The signs are crazy, aren't they? Paul Pogba and Eric Dyer.
Yeah, there's some real
It's
vintage
going to be some
crop
midfield
there.
next season. Italy's going to be a bit closer, you'd think, in Serie A, Mark, a bit more difficult to call in terms of this.
I love Italian football in terms of a betting heat. You know, there's about 5 or 6 teams that will feel like they can win it. Favourites definitely don't always win the Scudetto. Napoli are favourites this time around. The doubt I've got about, and they've signed De Bruyne, but the doubt I've got about them, Antonio Conte, when he's in Champions League, has absolutely stunk the place out previously. His teams really struggle to back it up, and there's 8 games. And does he concentrate domestically, or has he finally managed to work that one out? He hasn't previously. Wherever he's been, he's got a shocking record for how good he is. And I was just looking, I thought there might be an upset. So like Milan have got Max Allegri and Modric has gone there. I was like, no, I don't fancy them. Juventus were so far off it, couldn't really have them. Into like the humiliation of losing that Champions League final, I think it's difficult to get back. I landed on Roma because I think they've got the best manager in Gasperini in terms of somebody that can kind of manage situations, because Conte's the best tactician, but if it could just blow up one day and then he just walks out. I've seen that actually at Spurs not that long ago. And Roma finished last season really well, and they got Gasperini. So 2 ticks for me.
Milts, in terms of Italy, who are you looking at?
Yeah, I like Napoli. I wouldn't be hugely strong on them at the prices, but certainly anti-Inter after the way their season finished. Quite a strange managerial appointment, Christian Kivu, and then not great at the Club World Cup either. I'd certainly take on board Mark's concerns about, I think probably much trauma about Antonio Conte is the way to put it.
Fraud.
But you know, the previous time Napoli won the title in 2022-23, they reached the quarterfinals of the Champions League. So maybe that trend can change this time.
Is Germany going to be another Bayern domination? I mean, we've seen Erik ten Hag going at Bayer Leverkusen. It's going to be a tough task to follow in the footsteps of Xabi Alonso.
Yeah, I mean, that certainly doesn't fill you with confidence in terms of Leverkusen. I see he's already been buying players from the Eredivisie. Some things will just never change, I think. But I think Bayern will win it as easy as they like. I think in behind them, it's really interesting. I'm not sure that Dortmund are amazing anymore. We just mentioned there a couple of issues potentially with Leverkusen. Eintracht Frankfurt have lost Ekitike. They keep finding new strikers, but it's a blow for them. In the last 12 months, they've lost Marmoush and Ekitike, so there's a lot to for them to recover. Stuttgart were in the Champions League last season. They just couldn't work that out, playing Champions League and Bundesliga. It's difficult if you're not expected to be in that position, but they're about sort of 4-1, 9-2 for a top 4 finish, 25s-ish without Bayern. So they might be the two. Voltemade up front, the 2 foot. I think they call him the 2 metre Messi. 2 metre Messi. The 2 metre Messi is his nickname. Really impressed at the under-21s. Bayern are sniffing around him, but I think they might wait 1 year before they replace Harry Kane with him.
Is it going to be a German league title for Luis Diaz off the back of a Premier League title, Milts?
You'd say so. I mean, reservations over Bayern and Vincent Kompany, but yeah, the opposition doesn't really stack up. Borussia Dortmund needed an amazing finish just to make the top 4. I think they should finish second this year. Leipzig are interesting as well. Had that horrific Champions League campaign, losing 7 out of 8. New manager Ole Werner, who did well at Werder Bremen. Leipzig top 4 maybe, but no, it's not one of my favourite betting heats.
It's really underwhelmed by Dortmund at the Club World Cup. But they're the most disappointing European team there, really. They almost got chinned by the South African team at one stage.
Then they had a really easy draw, which didn't. So they probably. They're in the quarterfinals and it feels respectable. But as Nick said, they didn't play well at all. Yeah.
No, not at all. In terms of Spain, I mean, you've already said, Mark, that you feel that Barcelona could be Champions League winners. Does that make them likely La Liga winners?
Well, they're outsiders against Real Madrid, and I think you struggle to say that Real Madrid were better than them on the evidence of last season when Barca just continually smashed them. Xabi Alonso, I think he will get it right at Real Madrid, but whether he gets it right immediately, they've signed. I mean, Huijsen was very good at Bournemouth for years. You maybe think, how did he even end up at Bournemouth? And Juve selling him was just crazy from their point of view. Trent Alexander-Arnold, he's going to be a fantastic signing for Real Madrid as well. And I think that Xabi Alonso will find a solution to get Mbappe and Vinicius kind of working better together. So I actually think maybe in La Liga, doesn't feel much short of a 50-50 for me. Atletico Madrid spend a lot of money, but don't ever seem to get really that close. And I think people just tip them up because they feel like they should, rather than on the evidence of them. Like, they're always tipped up for the Champions League. It's been a while since they got very close to winning it, in my opinion. So I think it is a 2-horse race, and I haven't got anything sort of without the big 2 or even the top 4.
Is it a flip of a coin for you, Milts, as well?
I'd be edging towards Barcelona, but as Mark said, Atletico feels a little bit stale there, and I thought maybe at a bigger price, Athletic Bilbao without Barcelona and Real Madrid could be the way to go. Finished 4th last season, and level on points with Villarreal, but then there was a 10-point gap to Betis in 6th. So. And obviously a huge boost with Nico Williams staying. He looked all set for Barcelona. So Barcelona now claiming that Marcus Rashford was their number 1 target all along. So that's fine anyway. But huge boost for Athletic, and they had an outstanding defensive record last season.
Nick, will you be touching Europe at all in terms of bets this season, or will you be sticking mainly with UK football?
I like nothing more than a Sunday evening Italian derby, a Rome derby or a Turin derby or something to watch, but I don't have many bets in Europe, no.
Okay, well that covers Europe and the Champions League for this coming season. Time to have a look now at an accumulator in terms of our expert selections across the top 4 leagues in England. And Mark, we've come up with a Yankee for the punters to consider.
We're going to do an accumulator rather than the Yankee, Warren. So we've got 4 selections going to be boosted by SBK to industry best price, 29-1, and there's not a kind of overall consensus, so we've had to sort of just come together.
Yep.
We're going to go for Chelsea top 4 finish in the Premier League. Like last season, they managed to qualify for the Champions League. They won the Conference League. They also won the Club World Cup. They've got a young team. They're spending money. We don't expect them to go backwards. If anything, they're more likely to take a step forward. We're going to go for Ipswich to be promoted from the Championship. Like, it's going to be a disastrous season if Kieran McKenna's team are kind of not up there fighting for automatic promotion. They signed as if they kind of half knew that they might be a Championship team when they were in the Premier League last season. So they look the most solid of certainly the relegated teams. Then in League One, we all like Stockport to finish in the top 6. They were 3rd last season. No reason to think that they'll go sort of backwards from the near on 90 points that they got last season. League Two, there was a difference of opinion. We've come down on the fact Barnet to finish in the top 7. This was a team that romped to the National League title last season, and they're being underestimated in the market. So, winning it might be a step too far, but they should certainly be competitive. So Chelsea top 4 finish in the Premier League, Ipswich to be promoted from the Championship, Stockport to be top 6 in League One, and Barnet to be top 7 in League Two, and that's a boosted to 29-1 accumulator.
Okay, and as Mark said there, if you want to combine the panel's 4 best bets, then there's no place better than SBK. They boosted the price, as Mark said, and you can click in the link in the description of this episode or head to the football page in the SBK app where you'll be able to back it. That just about wraps up the BKO preview for this season. Before we leave, I want to try and get a best bet across the board from all 3 of our panellists. Nick, we'll start with you. If you were going to make one selection out of all of those that we've talked about, where would you be looking?
Preston relegation 5-1.
Milts?
Burnley to finish bottom.
Okay, and Mark?
I'm going to go for Stockport top 6.
Okay, well that does wrap up then the big kick-off for this season. Masses to look forward to, and of course don't forget, off the back of the season we've got the World Cup as well ahead, and you can of course stay in touch with everything that is going on in terms of the domestic and European action via the Racing Post website and YouTube channel.